Hello and welcome to episode 536 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva for a part 2 free agency fallout show. This one I think is going to be interesting because maybe some moves that the general NFL public isn't talking about very much, but very important for fantasy. Evan, how's it going today?
It's going great. Ready to knock this out, go update the free agent tracker, and start watching some March Madness.
Oh, baby. We are in business here for sure. On today's show, we're going to talk about free agency moves from both a real-life and fantasy perspective. Hopefully, you already listened to part 1. This is part 2. We'll probably have a part 3 as more free agency moves come in over the weekend. I do want to note we are recording this Thursday afternoon, and so things are going to happen. And we'll cover that in part 3 for sure, as there's still some free agency is slowing down, but there's still some moves certainly still out there. Before we get into it here today, reminder that best ball season never stops. Our friends at Underdog have already launched the big board $1 million tournament for the 2023 best ball season. Does include rookies. Our rankings for that are up and adjusting for everything we're talking about here today and the last episode. I think a pretty big edge right now. You can make some super teams because people are not adjusting fast enough to player movement. Anytime there is a change in personnel, scheme, coaching, that's when I think people who can react the fastest have the biggest edge, can build some real super teams right now. If you don't have an Underdog account, use promo code ETR at UnderdogFantasy.com for a $100 matching sign-up bonus. That's promo code ETR at UnderdogFantasy.com. All right, let's start with this James Robinson deal. 2 years up to $8 million with the Patriots. It's just really weird. Like, I know I didn't like the Juju signing that they did. We talked about that in part 1. James Robinson fell out of favor in Jacksonville. They dump him on the Jets. Then the Jets decide not even to play him. They instead went with guys like, Zonovan Knight and Ty Johnson, like geeks off the street. Why do you have to pay James Robinson 2 years, $8 million? I don't really follow it. Evan, can you make any sense of what the Patriots are doing, what you think their backfield will look like this year?
I think it's crazy. It might be the worst deal of free agency. We know the history of running backs coming off torn Achilles. James Robinson, you remember early in the season last year, he banged a few long runs and people were like, oh, he's back. No, he's not back. The Jets didn't even tender him. They could have tendered him at the right of first refusal, the original pick tender, for $2.6 million. They didn't even do that. And the Patriots go out and give him $4 million a year over 2. I mean, look, it's a 2-year, $8 million deal. It's not that big of a deal. But I was like, what? What is going on here? I think it's really good for Ramondre Stevenson, because James Robinson is someone that we can pretty confidently bet against. And I think that Damian Harris is way better than James Robinson. I don't think Damian Harris is going back to the Patriots. I think very, very slim chance that happens. Ramondre is going to crush it again.
Yep. Damian Harris remains a free agent as we are recording this. Have not really heard any rumors about him very much. Again, I agree with Evan. Big win for Ramondre Stevenson here. You saw last year when Damian Harris was out, Ramondre Stevenson's pass game role, I believe he had a stretch of 6 straight games of a 20% or more target share. That is truly elite at the running back position. And Ramondre Stevenson can play as a runner as well. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be much more expensive this year than he was when we were on him last year, but I still really, really like Ramondre Stevenson, especially in light of this James Robinson deal. Adam Thielen was released by the Vikings, 32 years old, certainly slowing down. Adam Thielen's been linked to Carolina a little bit as they are in search for wide receiver help. I saw Adam Thielen kind of beaking with people on Twitter who were calling him washed and done and can't play anymore. He didn't like that very much, predictably, but I think it's probably true. I'm kind of interested in KJ Osborne, though, Evan. I'm curious what you think about him. I don't think the Vikings will be done at the running back, at the wide receiver position going forward. But what do you think about KJ Osborne and any other fallout from the Thielen stuff?
Yeah, they also did acquire Jalen Reagor from the Eagles last year. The failed Eagles former first-round pick. I don't think very much of him, but I think he would probably be their number 3 receiver right now if the season started today. I'm interested to see what they do the rest of the way in free agency, in the draft. But right now, it looks like KJ Osborne, good athlete, has had some moments in the NFL. I really like the moving on from Adam Thielen for TJ Hawkinson, though. That's really what stood out to me, that I think the guy who gets the bump is TJ Hawkins. We saw that TJ Hawkinson sort of make the leap there last year after he was dealt to the Vikings. So I really, really like this for TJ Hawkinson. Again, I haven't started my rankings yet, but geez, I have to believe he's going to be a top 5 tight end in fantasy.
Yeah, we have TJ Hawkinson ranked a little bit above ADP right now, 42nd overall, and that sounds very expensive for TJ Hawkinson, but he was incredible last year, and like Evan said, appears to have turned the corner. Yet another first-round tight end who excels on his second team. There's a lot more going on in Minnesota here. The Dalvin Cook situation is really interesting. So, we talked about Alexander Mattison. I think we both had Alexander Mattison as one of our favorite sleepers in free agency. The Vikings, I think, stole him. 2 years, $7 million. If they can move on from Dalvin somehow, because Dalvin has a massive cap number. I think we're talking about $14 million for Dalvin, who had shoulder surgery after the season. If they can somehow dump Dalvin on someone or figure out some way out of Dalvin and then go with Alexander Mattison, 2 years, $7 million as their feature back, and then, find a 4th-round pick or something like that to pair with Alexander Mattison, I like that for them. I'm cautiously optimistic that Alexander Mattison will have a pretty big role this year because it's really hard to see Dalvin coming back. I could be wrong there. What do you think about all the Mattison stuff and them getting him for 2 years, $7 million?
Yeah, if the Vikings, we talked a lot about Alexander Mattison on the pre-free agency show. He's a banger between the tackles, and he can play in the passing game. And I think he's really good. He's also still only 24 years old. And I totally agree. What a steal. I think he was kind of savvy, assuming that they cut Dalvin Cook, which they can save $6 million if they don't make him a pre-June 1 cut. Or no, if they make him a pre-June 1 cut, they could save $6 million against the cap. If they make him a post-June 1 cut, they can save $9 million against the cap. I think it was kind of savvy. I don't know, did they fool Alexander Madison's agent into thinking, oh, Madison's just going to be back as the backup, and now they go cut Dalvin Cook. I think that's something that could happen. So I'm pretty, again, and I remember one thing that we said before in the pre-free agency podcast is that I would be excited if I was like a dynasty manager who had Alexander Mattison on my roster. I think he's going to end up with a really big role. I think Dalvin Cook is on the brink of being washed, and I would be excited to be holding Alexander Mattison. I would hold him in dynasty. I would not trade him.
Dude, if that's true that Alexander Mattison did this deal thinking he'd be a backup again, yeah. I mean, and he's not, like, that's malpractice by the agent, in my opinion. My God, that would be really, really bad. The other Vikings note, the one deal, like we talked about in part 1, teams are smarter, right? Like free agency, every year since I've been following the NFL, there's been some team that thinks they're going to be a hero and spend all this money in free agency. This has been the first year where I don't think anyone has really overpaid for anyone massively. Maybe though,
we're stretching here to criticize teams. Yeah. I mean, you talked about David Montgomery, 3-year, $18, $6 million a year. We're stretching to rip these teams.
Right. One that I thought surprised me, at least, and I like Josh Oliver, man. When Josh Oliver was coming out, I took him in a couple of dynasty drafts. He was a former 3rd-round pick of the Ravens. I thought he was athletic. I'm always looking for some cheap tight end. He never did anything really in Baltimore. 3 years, $21 million, just out of left field to the Vikings. I thought was weird, maybe not bad, but weird, and probably bad actually. Now that I think about it, concerning the rest of the market. But what do you think about the Josh Oliver stuff? And do you think he has a chance to be a fantasy asset this year?
No. I mean, he would need Hawkinson to get hurt, and even then, I don't think so. It was weird. It was weird to me, and I really like their GM, their young GM. I think he's really, really smart. That was Josh Oliver was a receiving tight end in college, and he's been like a blocking tight end in the NFL. I mean, he did play for the Ravens, and they use their tight ends to block, so he had to block. But I mean, I think he's going to be a blocking tight end behind TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota. It was weird. I think it was weird.
Yeah. I don't, without being well-versed in the blocking stuff, maybe this was the one that should be called the worst deal of free agency, but really stretching. It's not the worst thing
I think it's up there. I think it's up there. Yeah.
Robert Woods deal is interesting. 30 years old now, clearly not, I don't think, a difference maker or elite player, just a solid veteran wide receiver, 2 years, $15.5 million with the Texans. Texans will obviously be drafting, or likely to be drafting, a quarterback this year. Brandon Cooks seems to want out, or has wanted out for a while. Maybe this gives them some stability. It's just going to be really hard to find a big projection on Robert Woods with the quarterback play that we expect and kind of his skill set. But what do you think about Robert Woods going to the Houston Texans?
I mean, well, it's kind of funny because, they used a second round pick on John Mechie out of Alabama this past year. He, of course, missed his entire rookie season with, I believe, he had leukemia. Mm-hmm. He's expected back at some point. I don't exactly know when, but one of the most common comparisons for John Mechie coming out of Alabama was Robert Woods. Very, very similar type players. So that sort of makes you think, are they worried about John Mechie? But I don't know. Robert Woods, coming off the ACL, he's well over 30 at this point. I don't. Doesn't move the needle in any way. And he wasn't impressive last year in Tennessee.
When you're going for a rebuild, and I get that you're going to have a rookie quarterback. You want to have some talent. But when you're going for a rebuild, I like taking swings on like some younger ascending guys because, man, I mean, by the time the Texans are good, which they're so far away from being good, by the time they're good, I mean, Robert Woods is just going to be.
Yeah. And they've signed like 1 million guys and like none of them are good. I mean,
Samaje Perine, who we talked about a ton last year through the Joe Mixon stuff, for season long, through Joe Mixon Perine stuff for DFS. Samaje Perine got a 2-year deal with the Broncos, $7.5 million. This is going to flame the rumors that Javonte Williams' knee is worse than expected.
I think it definitely is.
Okay,
definitely.
So, hopefully, it's not like a really, really bad situation for Javonte. Latavius Murray remains a free agent. Perine showed last year when Joe Mixon was out that he can be a feature back in the NFL. I don't know if that's a long-term role for him. I'd rather him as like a spot starter and a pass down back. But I think that the Broncos are going to try to run the ball a ton under Sean Payton, which isn't normally his MO. Anything you can glean from Perine going to the Broncos here?
Well, I think that when you look at the all of what the Broncos have done in this free agency period, and it is signing right tackle Mike McGlinchey away from the 49ers. He's a run blocking right tackle. Signing Ben Powers away from Baltimore. He's going to play left guard in Denver. Signing Samaje Perine, sort of like a physical, power back, downhill runner. They also added Chris Manhertz, one of the better blocking tight ends in the NFL. Like, when you look at the sort of the accumulation of the moves that they've made, it looks like they want to run the ball. Mm-hmm. So that would be sort of my takeaway right now. Also, they have been shopping wide receivers as well. Yeah. So I think it potentially reflects poorly on the way that Sean Payton views Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Yep. Oh, I definitely think.
Or bringing it back to, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're not going to try to let Russ cook. We're going to bring Russell Wilson to the kind of offense that he played in early in his career.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think that's what Sean Payton's going to do. And if you read Matthew Berry's article from the Combine, he seemed to get the sense that Sean Payton's not in love with Russ Wilson either and is going to be looking for options for sure. Just a way out of Russell Wilson's contract is going to be very, very difficult. But like 1 year, 2 years out, 3 years out, they can reasonably get away from it. Miami stuff, they're going back to the same running backs. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, both back to Miami. Wilson got 2 years, $8.2 million. Mostert, 2 years, $5.6 million. They also brought back Myles Gaskin, just kind of status quo. I think it's going to be difficult, but it is at least notable to me that Jeff Wilson got a little bit more money. He got, $2.6 million more in reported sum than did Raheem Mostert, which I think makes sense. Mostert's kind of older now and probably can't handle as much as Jeff Wilson. But yeah, any thoughts on Wilson, Mostert, Gaskin going forward?
They also re-signed who's a little Salvan Ahmed.
Yep.
A little change of pace back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're just like getting the band back together at RB. You know, they know they need a bunch. You know, dudes get hurt. Wilson has a injury history as well. You know, all have familiarity with the offense. It's just they're going to play a bunch of RBs. It's probably not going to be super fun for fantasy. I saw that one sports book had the Dolphins as the favorites to land Dalvin Cook if he gets moved. I was like, what are you doing? You know, that's some sort of like promotional thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't think know. that would not be in Mike McDaniel's wheelhouse.
No, it does. And especially after they just like re-signed 4 RBs.
Yeah. Speaking of tight end deals, we talked about the Josh Oliver deal. I mean, Hayden Hurst, 3 years, $21 million, $13 million guaranteed sounds like a lot, but not in comparison to the Josh Oliver deal. So I think Panthers got a fine deal here on Hayden Hurst. Panthers desperately need offensive players just so badly, especially after giving up DJ Moore. Obviously, they gave up Christian McCaffrey last year. But anyways, Hayden Hurst, 3 years, $21 million. What do you think of that one to the Panthers, Evan?
Didn't think a whole lot of it. You know, he's a league average starting tight end, maybe. You know, we're talking about, let's just talk about their receiver core, their pass catcher core for a second. Terrace Marshall, Laviska Shenault, Hayden Hurst. I don't know, man. They need a lot of talent on offense. They need playmakers. Like they don't have playmakers on offense.
Yeah. And I think they're going to spend plenty of draft capital. And like I said, on the previous episode, they are meeting with DJ Chark on Friday. So like the Panthers are far from done. But yeah, I mean, Hayden Hurst, I would agree with that. And maybe a little bit above average NFL starting tight end. And it certainly had his moments last year for the Bengals. Let's get into some of these quarterback moves. So since we last did a show, Daniel Jones got his deal done, 4 years, $160 million. That's in line with the Derek Carr deal that we talked about, 4 years, $150 million. Jonnu Smith back to Seattle, 3 years, $105 million. That's the thing about the Lamar stuff. It's like, how can you look at these kind of deals? Daniel Jones, $160 million, Derek Carr, $150, Jonnu Smith, 3 years, $105, and not think Lamar is worth just way more. So I get where he's coming from. That said, this is the market. This is the current price for starting quarterbacks, for average starting quarterbacks in today's NFL. So I didn't really have a problem with the Giants deal. I didn't have a problem with the Geno deal. I think that that's just like the cost of doing business for a starting quarterback in today's NFL. What do you think about Geno, Daniel Jones, anything else on kind of current quarterback market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Geno showed this past year that he deserved that deal. What was it, 3.3 years, $75 million, I believe?
I think I saw $105 million, but yeah, could be off there on reported versus actual.
I think that was I think that was inflated, and then the numbers came out later and it was 3 years, 75. Either way, Geno earned it. You know, they really like him there, and I think that he's like matured. He kind of came into the league, I think, as like a little bit of like an immature dude, and I think that he's matured. Like it's been impressive to see. You know, I mean, he obviously beat everyone's expectations this past year. He's got that rapport already with DK and Lockett. I mean, you know, their offense absolutely has, you know, Kenneth Walker is going to be healthy this year. I mean, their offense has, you know, really nice potential. And then who was the other? Oh, Daniel Jones. Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of money for a player who, to this point, I mean, this past, what did he have? 15 touchdown passes or something last year. But I think that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are smart. I would lean toward like trusting them. And I think that they potentially see Daniel Jones as an ascending player who, as they start to piece together the pass catcher core, you know, that trajectory can continue to go upward.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, they're building offense, et cetera, you know.
Yeah, they're building it with the Giants, you know, like what you saw last year from Daniel Jones, I don't think is the finished product. I don't think that's the offense that necessarily Daboll wants to run. And so we talked a little bit about the Darren Waller deal on the last episode. That will certainly help Daniel Jones. Other quarterback news, Tyler Heinicke gets 2 years up to $20 million from the Falcons. I was really hopeful that the Falcons would make a hard push for Lamar Jackson. I thought they should. Maybe it's not too late. I don't know. But now they have Ritter and Taylor Heinicke. I assume there'll be some kind of competition there, assuming they don't get Lamar Jackson. What do you think about the Falcons quarterback situation now?
I think that they need to draft a quarterback and find a new starter, because I think they've got 2 backups, and this offense is not going to be good with, if they're starting Taylor Heinicke or Desmond Ridder in all likelihood.
Well, I'm not sure that you're aware, Evan, but the Kyle Pitts truthers were upset by the Jonnu Smith trade. The Falcons gave up a round 7 pick to get Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith also took, I believe, a salary cut in order to reunite with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. I don't know that this affects Kyle Pitts. I mean, Jonnu Smith is a blocker. He plays close to the line of scrimmage. Kyle Pitts is essentially a receiver. He plays deep down the field, but it's just like, doesn't strike me as great for Kyle Pitts. What do you think about the Jonnu deal and your optimism level on Kyle Pitts heading into this year? And by the way, Kyle Pitts is much, much, much cheaper this year than he was last year. Right now, his ADP is around 64th overall.
Atlanta, Arthur Smith, when he was in Tennessee, they used a ton of like 2 and 3 tight end sets. So I think that Arthur Smith just believes, and they tried to do that last year in Atlanta actually, but they just kind of didn't have the horses. I just think that Arthur Smith believes that, he wants to have that personnel package diversity to be able to play 2 tight end sets whenever he wants, and they got him for like nothing. So I think that Jonnu Smith is going to be the like the Y inline tight end, and Kyle Pitts, as you mentioned, will be the like a receiver.
For sure, quarterback play is going to be a big question, and we'll see what they do. But again, they do at least have Heinicke now, who was
Heinicke. Look, man, we talked about the comparison I made for him is like he's like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, he could get the ball to the receivers. I mean, and he will force it. I mean, we saw how much Terry McLaurin's production skyrocketed when he went in the lineup after Carson Wentz. I mean, he's going to throw the rock. He's going to be aggressive.
For sure. Speaking of dust ball quarterback situations, so look, man, Bucs went all in for Tom Brady, right? And they did it. It turned out, it worked out. They won a Super Bowl. Awesome. They are a mess right now. And I think they should be tanking for Caleb Williams. For those guys who don't follow college football, and I only follow it loosely, you have to be from like Mars not to see it with Caleb Williams, who looks like he's going to be an NFL superstar. And so there's going to be a lot of teams who I think should be trying to get Caleb Williams. One of them is the Bucs. And so while there were other quarterbacks out there, like I think Gardner Minshew is probably better than Baker Mayfield. They went with Baker Mayfield 1 year, $8.5 million to the Bucs. I think this puts them in a position to actually get Caleb Williams. What do you think of the Baker deal? Or maybe you're more optimistic on Baker than I am. I don't know. But what do you think of Baker to the Bucs for 1 year, $8.5 million?
It's actually 1 year, $4 million, up to $8 million. So, I mean, they got him for nothing. I mean, that's like one of the cheapest quarterback deals in the NFL. That's like way less than Tyler Heinicke.
Oh, yeah.
So, it is what it is. I don't think that they're necessarily tanking. I wouldn't be totally surprised if, I'll say this. I would expect Kyle Trask to make starts this year.
Definitely.
Because Baker Mayfield, could easily play himself out of that.
Yeah. And there's so many assets on the Bucs that are important for fantasy. We talked about Rachaad White a bunch, Mike Evans. I mean, there's guys that are going to be impacted majorly by quarterback play here. And so we'll see exactly how it shakes out. But right now, all they have is Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. I mean, it's ugly. Interestingly enough, speaking of competitions, Jacoby Brissett 1 year, $10 million to the Commanders, $8 million guaranteed for Jacoby Brissett. I think they're going to open this up to a competition with Sam Howell, which is a little bit disappointing to me because I wanted just to see what Sam Howell had. But I do think Jacoby Brissett is like one of the best backups in the NFL. Do you think it'll be an open competition? Who do you think will win it? What do you think about Brissett and the Howell stuff?
Yeah, we talked about on the pre-free agency show that Jacoby Brissett might be like, one of the more like undervalued quarterbacks on the market. He actually wound up getting a pretty nice deal. I mean, that's a really good deal for a backup, 1 year, $10 million. And I think it will be an open competition. I think that they'll end up both making starts this year. Sam Howell is intriguing because he's like a pretty good running quarterback. And we saw like he had a really, really, really nice preseason last year. They've got some legit weapons in Washington too. I think that Sam Howell ends up making the most starts, but I do think that Brissett will make starts too.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. I like Sam Howell. He's a 5th round pick who has one NFL start. I thought he was fine in that one NFL start, and he was good in the preseason. But yeah, I just want to see him get a chance, and hopefully Commanders give it to him, or at least he wins it. Other small quarterback news, Sam Darnold to the 49ers, 1-year deal, only $3.5 million guaranteed on that 1-year deal. Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, both coming off injury. It's a mess. I just think that like the 49ers do not know what the health situation is going to be of Purdy and Lance. They also may not know what they have necessarily in Lance. Maybe they don't think he's good enough. So they get some insurance in Sam Darnold, who's had flashes. I don't know. Can you make any sense of the quarterback stuff going on in San Francisco right now?
I really, really like the deal for the 49ers. I think it was an awesome signing. They're paying him very, very little. He's still 25, 26 years old. You have no idea what you have in Trey Lance, and that injury that Brock Purdy is coming off is like, it's a little scary. So, and Kyle Shanahan has had success with quarterbacks with much less talent than Sam Darnold. My take on Sam Darnold has sort of always been that at some point he's going to sort of like hit like a late career, like Rich Gannon sort of thing. He's going to kind of find it, because I think it's mental with him. I think it's mental with him. It's not a question of skill level. He's athletic. He's got, I think, plenty of arm strength. He was a very, very high pick in the draft. He's had nice moments. He had a lot of nice moments with the Jets. He's had flashes with Carolina. Going to Kyle Shanahan, I think it's a great move, actually by his agent too, to get him there. I wouldn't give up on Sam Darnold in like a 2-quarterback league dynasty by any means. He should absolutely be rostered in the Superflex and the 2-quarterback league dynasty leagues.
To me, it's been consistency with Darnold. Like you said, I mean, He had really good stretches, like 2, 3, 4-week stretches, even with Carolina, but he has not been able to string it together for a full season. One defensive and one offensive line move I want to mention before we get out of here. Cowboys got Stephon Gilmore for a 5th round pick. Mentioned before, they re-signed Leighton Vander Esch. They obviously have Trayvon Diggs, who I think is a little bit overrated, but they do have Micah Parsons, who's an absolute beast. I mean, this defense, and Stephon Gilmore, I get is old. He can still play. I think this defense could be awesome. Awesome. What do you think about the Stephon Gilmore deal for the Cowboys, and how good do you think their defense can be?
Loved it. 5th round pick. Now they got 2 big, long corners to play outside in Dan Quinn's defense. A very similar deal. Jalen Ramsey went to the Dolphins for a 3rd round pick, another steal. And they have 2 big, long corners as well in Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. It was interesting though that the Dolphins announced Jalen Ramsey as a safety, and he's played. I saw some guys who obviously don't really who cover the NFL but don't really pay attention to what's actually going on the field. Talking about how he shadows number 1 receivers. He hasn't done that in years. He actually plays in the middle of the field, the star position in the middle of the field, does a lot in the slot, but I love both of those moves. I mean, those are absolute steals. It's crazy to me that another team wouldn't step up, see Jalen Ramsey going to the Dolphins for, a 3rd round pick and, this backup tight end Hunter Long, and just, offer him, a late 2 or, a 3rd and a 5th or something like that. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing I wanted to mention was this Orlando Brown deal. Left tackle Orlando Brown goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, 4 years, $64 million. Massive deal, kind of out of character the way it was structured, I think, for the Bengals, but I like it for the Bengals. They have to keep going for it. I mean, this year, Burrow, assuming they don't get a deal done before the season on Burrow's extension, he's scheduled to count just $11 million against the cap. They have to keep going for it. They have to keep getting him protection. That's been the biggest story. When he gets protection, he is so good and has not just massive real life, but I mean, massive fantasy games, 400-yard fantasy games, just slinging it all over the field. So I like it for Cincy. Kansas City's losing a lot of guys, man. I mean, a lot of guys. So anyways, what do you think about the Orlando deal on both sides?
Yeah, the Chiefs are at risk of losing both of their starting tackles. Well, they already lost both their starting tackles because Orlando Brown went to the Bengals and Andrew Wiley went to the Commanders. I like the move a lot for the Bengals. I think that there are limitations, athletic limitations in particular, to Orlando Brown's game, but I think he's a solid NFL starting left tackle. They can now flip Jonah Williams. Either they could kick him inside to left guard, or they can move him over to right tackle, depending on what they do with La'el Collins. So that improves two positions with one signing. So I applaud the Bengals. The Bengals are like, you're right, they're going for it. Mike Brown has like loosened the pockets, and they've been aggressive in free agency. They did lose their two stud safeties, Von Bell and Jackie Bates, and they're going to have to make some internal moves there. But I mean, Lou Anarumo. Gosh, so many vowels in that name. He's done a great job with that defense, and I know they're going to be back. They're going to be really good again.
I mean, I thought they had the Chiefs on the ropes, man. I thought in the AFC Championship game they had the Chiefs on the ropes, and just kind of got a bit unlucky there at the end to the Bengals, but been consistently one of the best teams in the NFL the last 2 years. Getting Orlando Brown, I think, is a nice addition for them. All right, we've covered everything free agency has to offer over the last 2 episodes. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We do have a goal of reaching 35,000 YouTube subscribers before NFL starts in September of this year. Really appreciate if you hit the YouTube, hit the subscribe button for us. We continue to put out free content like this there and other videos that you won't find on the podcast feed. Other content will be on the YouTube machine. For Evan, for Bruce Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.